Vote to elect a Speaker of the House. Jim Jordan would be an outstanding Speaker of the House.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard.
Interesting to me to hear you say that Jim Jordan would be a great speaker, given he was someone who sent a text to the Chief of Staff on January 5th that outlined for you to violate the Constitution and block the certification of the election.
Got him. We fucking got him.
Just when you thought the glued-on spine Mike Pence was wearing was worth its money, you had to go on CNN and do this.
He is a principled conservative, just as Steve Scalise is.
Come on, Mike. One day, you're rightfully labeling Trump's lawyers as this.
I was clear on that throughout. I was clear with President Trump throughout, all the way up to the morning of January 6th. But let's be clear on this point. It wasn't just that they asked for a pause. The president specifically asked me, and his gaggle of crackpot lawyers asked me to literally reject votes, which would have resulted in the issue being turned over to the House of Representatives, and literally chaos would have ensued. So
the next day, you're coddling up to the very man who wanted to violate that constitutional oath you claimed to swear by and put your safety in jeopardy.
Well, it's remarkable to hear you say that about Jim Jordan.
As we move into a new week that, well, if last week is anything to go by, will be another roller coaster episode on the Real Housewives and Husbands of the GOP.
Cannot in good conscience vote for someone who attended a white supremacist conference and compared himself to David Duke.
He's an animal, like holding a child. He is a fucking terrorist.
They think this whole place is a circus up here now. And now all of a sudden, Jim Jordan is nominating Steve Scalise, and then we're voting for Jim Jordan. That's utter chaos.
With the Speaker debate looking grimmer than the person forced to film Marge's CrossFit breakdowns, CNN host Kaitlan Collins discussed the matter with Mike Pence. A discussion that involved Pence praising Jim Jordan and self-described David Duke without the baggage, Steve Scalise. And as Collins showed, she wasn't going to sit idly by.
And vote to elect a Speaker of the House. Jim Jordan would be an outstanding Speaker of the House. He is a principled conservative, just as Steve Scalise is. And at a time when we see war raging in Eastern Europe, the worst attack on the Jewish state of Israel since its refounding in 1948, challenges here at home in our economy, a crisis at our border, the American people want to see the Republican conference come together, elect a speaker, and get back to work.
Well, it's interesting to me to hear you say that Jim Jordan would be a great speaker, given he was someone who sent a text to the Chief of Staff on January 5th that outlined for you to violate the Constitution and block the certification of the election. I mean, do you really believe that's someone who should be third in line to the presidency?
I have immense respect for Jim Jordan. He's a man of integrity, and I've known him for many years. I was not aware of his opinion going into January 6th.
So that doesn't bother
my
you?
interaction with Congressman Jordan in December was simply over the legitimate objections that members of Congress were permitted to file under the law. But look, we may have a difference of opinion about my duties under the Constitution that day, but I'm very confident that if Jim Jordan becomes Speaker of the House, that he'll lead with integrity, and the most important thing is that the Congress come together, that Republicans come together and elect a speaker, because as you've reported on your airwaves, we may well, as we sit here, be just a few hours away from when this war initiated by Hamas with brutal assaults on men, women, and infant children will enter a whole new phase. And it'll be important throughout that time that America speaks with one voice, that our nation stands with Israel, that we will stand with Israel today, tomorrow, and through all the difficult days ahead.
Yeah. Well, it's remarkable to hear you say that about Jim Jordan.
Now let's discuss. Is it surprising that Pence would throw his support and hollow words behind a man who quite literally wanted him to violate the oath that Pence claims to swear by? No, of course not. What we know about the Republican Party is that when it comes to morality, ambiguity is the calling card. They'll go from condemning their fearless leader with a full chest after his role in January 6, calling him a disgrace and all.
Last week's violent attack on the Capitol was undemocratic, un-American, and criminal. The president bears responsibility for Wednesday's attack on Congress by mob rioters.
To then openly admitting that they would fully back said disgraced leader if it meant gaining control.
And you said Donald Trump's actions preceding the January 6th insurrection were a, quote, disgraceful dereliction of duty. How do you go from saying that to 2 weeks later saying you'd absolutely support Donald Trump if he's the Republican nominee in 2024?
Well, as the Republican leader of the Senate, it should not be a front-page headline that I will support the Republican nominee for president.
After you've said that about him, I think it's astonishing.
I think I have an obligation to support the nominee of my party.
They have no moral red lines. In fact, they're as adjustable as a Lauren Boebert alibi. So of course Pence will support Jordan, support Freddy Krueger if it meant clawing their way back to any semblance of power. But here's the thing. As Meidas fan favourite Jasmine Crockett outlined on an interview last week, the fact that out of how many candidates they could have chose from, this is the best they could come up with.
This tells you everything that you need to know about the Republican Party. I mean, think about it like this. Each district is approximately 766,000 people, almost 1 million people that we represent. And you have 435 representatives. And on the Republican side, you have well over 200 representatives. And the best two that they could find are a guy that covered up sexual abuse, which, hey, this absolutely makes sense why Trump decided that that would be his guy, right? Like the guy who's just been found liable of sexual abuse, right? So that guy, or we've got to go with the other guy who loves to pal around with David Duke. And for those who don't know who David Duke is, he racist, think KKK. That is David Duke. This is who the Republican Party has to offer the American people. This is their creme de la creme. And we wonder why our country is crumbling in front of our eyes.
It's indicative of a party in shambles.
You are watching the plan play out. And by
Matt Gaetz is, frankly, a vile person. All right? He's not somebody who's willing to work as a team. He stands up there, he grandstands, he lies directly to folks.
Scarlet letter after the week that I just had last week, being a woman up here and being demonized for my vote and for my voice.
You can't govern. You can't govern. You can't elect a speaker.
I don't know. I don't know. We passed the Parents' Bill.
Consensus candidate at this point?
How many people have we gone through? You know?
How many of your constituents give a shit about the process that occurred yesterday?
They can't even put out a condemnation letter from the House because they don't have a House Speaker.
Hey, Meidas Mighty. Love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram @MeidasTouch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.